everyone and welcome to my channel Creative Space. Today's vlog is very special because we have a very special guest with us, Miss Kathryne, all the way from Japan, and she is here to explain to us or create an awareness on how to raise boys. I'm sure there are many mothers out there who would have want to have some help on certain questions. So we are going to target those questions, and Kathryne is extremely expert in this for many years. So firstly, Kathryne, thank you so much for doing this for my channel and welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So Kathryne, will you please briefly introduce about yourself and Sonhood Coaching? What is it about?
Okay, well, I'm a Canadian international educator who lives in Japan, as you mentioned. And since leaving Japan years ago, I've worked either in the classroom or as a school leader in school institutions. So I've worked in Canada, Japan, Lebanon, Thailand, Georgia, and Qatar. And basically, my passion has always been focused on children and their parents and other educators. So, my job right now is that I guide parents raising boys to understand their sons and the world that they're living in better so that they can have deeper connections and better communication skills. Through my business, which is called Sonhood Coaching, I advocate for the protection of the inner emotional world of boys. I give adults in their lives the knowledge and the tools that will impact how they see their sons and how their sons see themselves, and whether their boy survives or just thrives in his earliest years. So parents often come to me, come to my business when they're at the end of the rope. They've read all the parenting books, they've joined online groups, they've tried all the things, and still they can't understand or get through to their son. So conflict at home seems endless, school becomes more challenging, and more days than not, these moms end up crying out their frustration in the privacy of their bedroom. And then they contact me. And that's usually how we start.
Oh, okay, okay. It's a very unique initiative, Kathryne, I must say. I have heard very less of this. So kudos to you. Great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming, but it's still very much in the beginning stages of standing up and recognizing for the needs of our boys.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. Now my next question would be, Kathryne, what are some of the basic differences between raising a son and a daughter?
Well, the difference is that parents raising children today need to be aware of what messages, their children are getting about what it means to be a girl or what it means to be a boy. And the more that parents understand that sometimes these messages cause, conflicting emotions in a child, then they're able to support that child's growth. Otherwise, the stereotype, the biases that come with gender just continue. So they are different, but a parent needs to do some research. They need to become aware. They need to understand what those um, gender differences are, the challenges as well as the gifts, and then intentionally parent based on that information.
Um, okay, thank you for that answer, Kathryne. Now my next question would be, I think this is very specific one. So in India, kids sleep with their parents uh, till the age of 5, 6, or sometimes 7 years old. And then it gets very tricky for the parents to ask the kid to shift to another room. So how can a parent tackle this? What are the tips that you would like to share with our viewers?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because, coming from Canada, when we had our son, it was automatic that he would have his own, the baby's room. That was the plan. That was my culture. That was what was expected. In Japan, there are some similarities with India. So children do sleep in the same rooms, often in the same bed as their parents for a long time. Um, we decided to start that way as well. And it certainly felt better to me. I was much more comfortable having our baby in the same room that we were. We were lucky in the fact that we had a large bedroom, like a
Yeah.
large bedroom. So as he grew up for the first 4 years, like we shared the same room for 4 years. And once he became, like a little bit older, like I don't know if it was a year, I don't really remember exactly the time. I just remember once his body got bigger, so that he was keeping both his father and I awake because of
Yeah.
moving when he's sleeping. So that was the issue. And so what we did was, in Japan, you sleep on the floor on mattresses, on futons. So what we did is we got a child's futon, a mattress, and put it next to ours. So that was the first step. Then, as time passed, and we wanted to gradually develop this sense of independence, but we knew that we couldn't, or I knew that we couldn't just put him in a room, because that separation would cause anxiety, because we needed to prepare him. And to be really honest, I needed to prepare myself, because I was very attached to him. And that was very difficult. That was very, very difficult for me.
Yeah.
So what we did was, first it was the mat next to our mat. And then, because we had a large space, gradually the mat moved to the opposite side of the room. And then when we finally got to the point that we thought, okay, he's turning 4, this is probably time he's secure in his relationship, he feels safe. So maybe now is the time. So what we did is we had an extra room in the house, and my husband redecorated it, like did the wallpaper, the ceilings, really we just devoted everything to that, so that it made it very exciting. And like that's what a big boy does, that's, this is for a big boy. And that was his birthday present for when he was 4 years old. And it was a little bit difficult, but in those first few nights, we really built up on the excitement. Like,
Ah,
this is your room now, and look at, you've got all your things in there. We're ready if a friend comes over to stay with you, and really made it a positive, kind of thing with him. But always said, if you wake up and this seems strange, come on upstairs. Like, we were on 2 different floors. So he wasn't banished, or, it was like, this is going to be fun. You've got your own room now. And that's how we did it. So for a parent that is thinking about it, if it can be as gradual a separation as possible, then it won't create the same, emotional turmoil for either one of you, for either the parent or the child.
yeah. Yeah, true. I think that makes sense, and it's a very good tip. And for all the viewers, on a personal note, even we did the similar thing with our daughter. We got a loft bed with a slide, so that
Mhm.
we decorated her room, and then she was very excited. But yeah, that was at the age of 5. So
Yeah.
yeah, it takes time. Okay, so now, Kathryne, my next question would be: it is observed that by the age of 5 or 6, again, boys get curious about the body parts. I mean, all the kids get curious, but um, how can a mother tackle certain kind of questions with the boys? So, what do you have to say on this?
Well, I'm a very firm believer of, you know, saying it as it is, like not, not talking down to a child, not, whatever is developmentally appropriate. So from the time that your child, is very young, you can start by, labeling the body parts with the proper names. Like, it's very easy to talk about body parts with proper names, so that it has no negative or positive connotation to it. It's just a part of your body. You also talk to your child about privacy, like, this is not something that you can do in public. This is not appropriate to do in this situation. People's bodies are private, and that kind of things. Sometimes parents, especially moms, can get a little bit embarrassed, and just not feel confident in, having these conversations. And I would say the best thing to do in that situation is get your child age appropriate, really high quality books. And
Yeah.
if you have a book, then you don't, have to initiate the conversation. You can have the conversation together while you're looking at the book. Or when he gets a little bit older, especially like going into puberty, those times where he wants to have some independence, but he is really curious about things going on with his body. He needs good information. And if he doesn't get it from you, he's going to get it from other places and it won't be what you're hoping he gets. So I would say really, really focus on really high quality. And there's lots of really good books out there on sexual development and body parts and different ages and stages that you go through. So that's the way I'd go.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that tip. Yeah, books do help. So, now again, you spoke about puberty, Kathryne. So, how do sometimes during puberty, our hormonal, there is a lot of hormonal changes, hormonal imbalance, and it's a very vulnerable stage for all the kids. But for boys, especially, how to tackle those anxieties or those, anxiousness, and they do not listen. They go in the no, 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 no mode for everything. So, how can a parent tackle this, Kathryne?
Well, I think it starts way before puberty. And again, the first thing I think is understanding more about the differences between raising a boy and raising a girl. So trying to understand a little bit better about what their development is, trying to understand the impact. And even after I've been doing this for almost 30 years, in the last couple of years, there has been more available information about testosterone that I didn't understand. So how can a boy understand what's going on with his body and how the hormones are affecting him? So like it all really comes down to, as the parent, we have a responsibility to learn more because our especially our boys, because they are getting different messages from society.
Yeah,
When a boy goes through puberty, he doesn't know that there is a change. When a girl goes through puberty, she begins her menstrual cycle. Everybody understands now she's not a little girl anymore. Now she's going towards womanhood. It's understood, it's recognized, it's usually marked and celebrated.
yeah,
For a little boy, there is nothing because we don't usually have a rites of passage anymore, which is something that I do encourage parents to consider that are raising boys. But there is no signal for them to understand my body is changing. These things, it's natural, but they feel out of control. They don't understand why their emotions are all over the place. They don't understand why they suddenly have these really strong impulses that they don't seem to be able to control. So the more we understand, the more we can support them in understanding what's going on with their body and how that affects their mental health.
yeah. I think also parents have to be at the peak of their patience during this time. Yeah,
Well, the more that you understand, there's something about when I talk to parents about misbehavior with their little boys, because that's usually the biggest problem parents have is
yeah,
misbehavior. And if you can look at misbehavior as a signal, as a cry for help. So say your son does something, hits and hurts his sister or something like that. But he's been aggressive. He it's something he knows not to do, and he's gone ahead and done it anyway. The parent has a choice. They can just address the behavior and say, okay, well, you hit, so now it's a timeout for you. You know, you can't do that. You can't hurt your sister. So, go to your room or whatever, is the rule in your family. That is only looking at the behavior. If you understand, especially for a boy, behind every misbehavior, there is some emotion that's not being met.
yes,
So if you think and understand that, and you go past the behavior and you try to figure what's going on. Like, why did that come out? What's inside that, he's conflicted with or he's worried about, or it's either going to be an emotional reason or a physical reason. Because even if he's just, he hasn't gotten enough sleep, or it's the time of the day that he's hungry, but there's these expectations and he can't control himself, in those situations. So it's not that you don't hold him accountable for the behavior, because you do. But
Yes.
when you are looking for the reason so that you can support and guide him, so that the
Mhm.
next time he'll understand, maybe he'll say, oh, my sister is really bothering me right now, and I know I'm hungry. So I'm going to, go out to the kitchen and get something so that I don't smack my sister. Like, eventually they'll get to that stage as well. If the parent can be in tune that the misbehavior is a signal, and that's the signal for us to check in and see what's going on.
All right. All right. All right. Fair enough. Um, Following this question would be, Kathryne, why do some boys seem so aggressive and defiant? I mean, way before puberty, like 5, 6 age, what do you think it is?
So have you ever heard of what they're calling now as the boy code?
No.
No. So I first came upon that phrase from a book. It was called Real Boys from Dr. William Pollock. And it was in the mid-90s, I think. And he coined that phrase. And the boy code is it's the societal rules that are placed on what it means to be a boy. So what is the expected behaviors? And there are three myths around the boy code. And one is boys will be boys should be boys, and boys are toxic. So it says that, boys will be boys. So because of the testosterone, then, yeah, they're going to be aggressive. Yes, they're going to be wild. And that's just the way it is for a boy. Sometimes when you go into this mindset, you you make allowances for behavior.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, no, that behavior is not all right, if you're thinking, oh, well, that's just a boy thing. Boys do that. And that's a myth. That's not reality at all. So you've got this set of societal rules, and a little boy comes to understand at different points. And I don't know exactly what the system is in India, but many boys, it's the time that this aggression and defiance usually escalates. Like it comes out beforehand, but it escalates when they start going into the educational system. So into
Yes.
preschool or to, yeah.
Yes.
And so the reason behind that is that, they're inside, they know what their authentic self is. Say, for example, he falls down when you're teaching him how to ride a bicycle, and he falls down and he starts to cry. And you say, oh, come on, there's no need to cry. It's not that bad. Get up. Come on, we'll try it again. No big deal. So at that time, what your son comes to understand is that, like, he's hurt. He wants to cry. He's got good reason to cry. But the most important person in his world is saying, no, you don't need to cry. That's not acceptable behavior because you're a boy. So don't cry. So in order for him to stay connected to you, the most important person in his world, he has to put on this mask. And this mask is the mask of the behavior that he thinks you want to see. So the
Okay.
next time that he falls, he's going to try really hard not to cry, because he knows if he doesn't cry, then you'll be happy with him and you'll continue to love him. The danger in and how this plays out is that time over time over time, a little boy comes to understand that if he shows his true self, his emotional self, that puts him in a vulnerable spot, that leaves him, um, uh, he can be either shamed or embarrassed for that behavior. And so he will continue to put on masks. And the more masks that he has to put on, the harder it is to tap into that really deep emotional, sweet little guy
Yes.
that's in there. So imagine when he gets to the point that he's starting school. So he's starting kindergarten.
Yeah.
School in general is very much geared to a female style of learning. In the younger years, it's usually a female teacher. So he goes into an educational environment where his style of learning is to be very active, to be moving a lot,
Yes.
to be, solving problems, to using his hands, to making things. And that's usually not the way the classrooms run. And the little girls in the classroom, because developmentally, they're about a year to a year and a half ahead at that point.
Yes. Yes.
And so you have the little girls there that are just loving school and they're doing well. They go home and they play school, like, that they're in their happy zone. And you've got the little boys that can't keep up with the little girls. They don't have the fine motor skills they need. They don't have the self-regulation skills that they need. They can't sit, forever. They're not so interested in reading and writing. Like, it's just, they are not set up for success. And so their frustration gets higher and higher and higher. And so you have more and more misbehavior. And even if they can keep it together during the school hours, you can be almost guaranteed when they come home, they're going to put it all on you because they
Yeah.
have had to keep it together all day long in an environment that it doesn't cater to their learning style.
Yeah, true, true. Agreed. And it is the same thing in India as well. Let me tell you
Okay.
this. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the kids do get influenced because of each other also.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
so yeah. Okay, so my next question, Kathryne, would be how can a parent tackle the long screen time hours? Like especially for boys, because boys are little stubborn. I would say. There are good kids, definitely. But for boys, they are because they're aggressive also. And parents sometimes want the kid to be sitting at one place doing something, but then it gets very habitual. Is their lifestyle nowadays? And how to tackle this, Kathryne?
Well, I'm kind of old school in that thinking.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think it's connected with respect, and
Hmm.
I think it's connected with parenting style.
Yeah.
So I think especially for boys, I think
Yeah.
especially for boys, if you are fair, firm, and consistent, those three things from the earliest time in his life. So if you say, for example, if when he's younger, you say, okay, well, on the weekend, you can play this game on the computer for 40 minutes. And you try it, the first time, and he gets to 40 minutes and he doesn't want to stop.
Yes.
And yep, so then you need to say, this is what the rule is. If you can't handle it at this point, that's okay, but I'm going to take it away and we'll try this again another day when you think that you can be successful. It's not punishing, it's not disciplining. It's saying, I'll try. If you think that you can handle 40 minutes, one day of the weekend, we will give it a try. But if you're not successful, then I'm going to help you by removing it until you're ready to try it again. So it's not like I understand, the influence of uh, technology and some boys especially definitely have more of a tendency to be kind of, almost like an addiction at some time. It's very difficult for them. So those three things: be fair, be firm, be consistent. The first time that, you're trying to establish something and you have a rule that you both agreed upon, and the first time that he says, "Oh, I've just got another 10 minutes, please, mom," and you say, "Okay," you have just, I don't like to say you've ruined everything, but you have taken about 10 steps backwards. So
Okay.
he is going to have to test you for probably 10 times because now you've shown him that, oh, it's not always 40 minutes. If there, she might cave in. Instead of, if you're consistent, eventually he'll know, okay, mom says 40 minutes, she means 40 minutes.
Yeah. Very nicely and very politely put across, Kathryne. It takes everything, I think, for a mother at that point to yell and to subside the aggressive side that a mother goes through.
Yeah,
I hope it helps. This rule helps everybody and the
I
kids
hope so. It
understand.
it works. It does work.
Yeah, yeah, hope so. Um, Now we are at the end of the podcast, Kathryne. My last question would be, I think there are some cultural differences, and in our conversation, and I would really like to understand from your end, what do you think, how different it is, and how can you address this thing for our viewers?
Well, as I mentioned, I've lived in quite a lot of different cultures and
Yeah.
countries, and so I have a familiar, and because it's usually international environment, so we have a lot of different cultures, and there are influences, of course, and but I would say there are more similarities than there are differences. So this thing of fair, firm, and consistent in raising your sons, I think that's universal.
Yeah.
Like whatever culture you're in, I think it's universal. I think sometimes there are some discrepancies with behavior and discipline and those kinds of things. And yet, even in cultures that view discipline in a different way, I have found that parents are always like they're always wanting to do their best. Like they really do want to do their best. They love their children. And I have always found parents to be receptive. So if they hear a different way of doing it that might be more successful for their family, most often they'll give it a try, even if it doesn't really go with the culture that they're living in. So that's what I would say. There are differences, but there are more similarities than not.
Okay. Following this question quickly, I just thought of asking, is it okay for a parent to not talk to a child for some time if the kid is misbehaving? Is it okay mentally for the kid also?
Oh,
Sorry. So that wrong words are not put across in the child's head from the parent's mind, sometimes we lose patience. And so at that time, is it okay to just keep quiet and not talk? What do you think?
I think there's a couple of things. One thing is in any interaction with your child, you have two choices. Something you're going to do or say is going to keep your connection closer, or it is going to separate you more. So if you focus on that and you try to make sure that whatever your actions are, you're putting your relationship first,
Yeah.
that will make a difference. The other thing in there is discipline, a perspective of discipline. So if you look at discipline as guidance and not punishment, then you're going to work with your child to help him understand the skills and the strategies to be able to make better choices in the future. That's our job as a parent. It's not to punish them. That usually severs the relationship. They either get very quiet and compliant, like they shut down, or they get angrier. Those are usually the two reactions. So if you put the relationship first, if you think misbehavior is a cry for help, if you use that and you try to guide them, and there's such an easy way to do that. Like once you know there's a very simple um, procedure to go through, and it's all based on respect.
Yeah.
When you're saying that you can, as a parent, when you're about to lose it. So I personally do not support timeout
Okay.
because that separates a child. The only time I think timeout is really positive is when a parent takes it. So when a parent says, I need a timeout. I'm really upset right now. I'll come back in 10 minutes, but I can't talk to you right now. I am giving myself a timeout.
All right. All right. That's amazing how you put it across. I hope it helps many mothers out there. So, Kathryne, thank you so much once again for shedding light on the most important aspect for any parent. And thank you once again for coming on my channel.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.